This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.
Kevin, good morning and welcome to AMN Drivetime.
Morning, Bill. Great to see you.
Great to see you. You look
It's been a
great.
long time. It's been a long time.
You look great on screen, Kevin.
Thank you.
Kevin, I've had the privilege to know you, I think, for most of my career in the automotive aftermarket, which spans 30 plus years. For the benefit of our audience, Kevin, why don't you just walk us through how you got started? I know you, maybe even a little bit before Northwood, because I know you're a proud graduate of Northwood University.
Well, Bill, it's interesting because, yes, I am a graduate of Northwood Institute at that time, now Northwood University. In the early days, and I hate to date myself, but there was a little conflict in Southeast Asia going on. And for those of us trying to get into college, it was a challenge. I actually went to prep school when I got out of high school, DeSales Catholic High School in Lockport, New York. And I went to the Manlius Academy down in Manlius, New York. It's a military prep school. But it kind of rounded out my education. I got some grades up that I was lacking in. And my sister-in-law, of all things, was a guidance counselor in Detroit, Michigan, over at St. Clair Shores. And she had some friends of hers that had departed to go to Northwood and be in their recruiting areas. So between having a direct pipeline to the recruiting people in Northwood, plus I did go play football there for a year.
Yeah, got it. And you still have friends in the industry today that you went to Northwood with, I believe.
Oh, yes. There's quite a pack of us still running around the aftermarket.
Okay, so you graduate Northwood, then what?
Well, funny thing happened in my junior year. A little company out of Monroe, Michigan, who recruited very, very heavily out of Northwood, asked me to go interview to do an internship between my junior and senior year. And I was rooming with a fraternity brother of mine who was from New Jersey. His dad owned some dealerships, and he was a big gearhead, race cars, blow his car up down at the Tri-City Dragway in Saginaw, Michigan. And so when I got the job for the internship, I came home and I said, "Hey, Herb," I said, "I got this job with this company called Monroe, but I said, can you tell me what's a shock absorber?" Well, needless to say, he was quite perplexed that I had gotten the job without even knowing what the heck a shock absorber was. But that was the beginning of my, I was fortunate enough. I got sent out to metropolitan New York and Connecticut, spent the summer in the New York metropolitan area. Stories that I can't repeat on air, but it was a great learning experience in more ways than one.
Got it. Okay, so you're with Tenneco.
No, I was with Monroe Auto Equipment Company.
Pardon me. Okay, Monroe. So keep going.
So when I graduated, I was very fortunate. There was a gentleman who I worked for. I think one of your questions is, who are the sage of your background, the people
some of your mentors?
Yeah, I had a guy by the name of Warren Ellis, who was the old-fashioned whiskey drinking, cigar smoking, golf 8 days a week guy who was just a swashbuckler of a businessman. And I remember calling Warren up. I'm a young kid. My bride and I are coming out to New York. And I said, "Warren, where should I live?" Now, upstate New York is a long ways from metropolitan New York. They're not even, New Yorkers don't even recognize upstate New York as being part of New York. They think it's somewhere over in Ontario. Warren said to me, he goes, I was going to cover all the Firestone stores and dealers in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, metropolitan New York. He goes, "Live near a bridge." Live near a bridge. Okay, first thing I had to do was go by, and I know I'm dating myself when I say buy a Hagstrom map, but that's what I did to figure out what bridge I needed to live by. And it's one of the great stories. And honestly, if I may digress for a second to one of your questions, Warren was my first mentor. Yes. He taught me a lot about sales, taught me a lot about the Monroe style of entertainment. I think John Washpish referred to that the other day. The Monroe threw fantastic parties, but he really gave me a sense of selling, of marketing. And, I stayed in that job for about 2.5 years and then moved up into Connecticut for my first real sales territory in not the wealthy part of Connecticut, Fairfield County, but the kind of outlying counties of Connecticut. A lot of fun, great people.
Terrific. And so you're working for Monroe. Now you're in Connecticut. And where did you go from there?
Well, I got my first promotion then about 6 years later, where I became a district manager, which meant I had 5-6 people working for me, a couple in Connecticut, a couple in Fairfield and Westchester County. I had the Bronx, Queens, and all of Long Island. So, I mean, it was a good sized territory, very challenging. I had a couple of Northwood guys actually working for me by that time. And that was really the beginning of kind of my managerial stint. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I only was in that position for 2.5 years when I met my next mentor, a gentleman by the name of Paul Frank. Paul Frank is probably to go from the whiskey drinking, swashbuckling Warren Ellis, Paul Frank was probably one of the most polished, low-key executives, but very focused to the job and to the customer. Paul's background was a Monroe guy that actually Warren had hired out in Iowa, and he was very successful, well respected in the industry, and Tenneco had bought us. So it was it was interesting because to watch Tenneco try to bring Walker and Monroe together to work in harmony, which was a very interesting task. Really, it was another time shaping of my management, career, because Paul had such a different approach. I mean, he'd be the guy, Bill, that he'd buy a table at the AWDA breakfast, and by at least end of September, the breakfast is in November, that table was full and everybody was at his table that morning. That's the respect those customers had for him. And he was just a tremendous mentor, shaped my life. And then we began to consolidate regions. And I was fortunate enough then to take over the New England region and a little bit of the Mid-Atlantic region. So fun, greatest job I ever had.
Fantastic. So Kevin, okay, so now you're in Connecticut, and now what happens?
I think one of your questions on your list here, Bill, is not the worst decision you ever made, but one that maybe you regret. This one will always haunt me. It was a great opportunity. Tenneco had shifted the management inside of Monroe. We had a gentleman come in from outside the industry. They made head of sales and marketing. He came in from PepsiCo, and he wanted me to come back to Monroe, Michigan, and take over national accounts. Now, the opportunity was to be senior director of national accounts. Well, there were a number of problems, but one really haunted me in the fact that where I worked in the market that I was responsible for, we had no national accounts. Metropolitan New York, you might have had 3 Kmart stores and Montgomery Wards. That was about it. You had some, what they used to refer to, I'm going back to a vernacular that was used back in the day, called red front stores, which was how you explained or denoted a retail store. So in New York, you had R&S Strauss. Over in Long Island, you had 8 Auto Supply. There was a small chain up in New England whose name's going to escape me. We didn't have the big box retailers. Even Napa wasn't that strong in the area. They had a couple DCs and a bunch of stores, but it was pretty much the traditional. So I took the job to go in and head up national accounts. And my wife, to this day, God rest her soul, I moved her from Fairfield, Connecticut, and no offense to my friends in Ohio, you included, but we had to move. We moved to Toledo, Ohio. To leave the shores of Long Island Sound to move to the shores of Lake Erie.
Well, those of us in Ohio would say you upgraded.
Yeah, thank you. We, I don't know. That was a tough move. It was a tough move.
All right. I guess I didn't realize your Monroe Tenneco career spanned so many opportunities and locations.
Yeah, 18 years. And then I got national accounts going and flowing and blowing, and oh my heavens. I mean, we had, the auto zones of the world were not, they were just starting. I think they were Auto Shack. O'Reilly's was still a traditional warehouse distributor. Ozark Automotive. I had a chance to meet Mr. O'Reilly. But I mean, we had Midas, we had Kmart, we had Western Auto, we had Merchants Time. I mean, we had all the big hitters. And then they came to me and said, once you're a New Yorker, you're a New Yorker. And they did come and ask me if I was interested in going back out in the field and consolidating the Southeast and Southwest regions. And I just said, what part of this Yankee you think is going to fit in either in Texas or Atlanta, Georgia? Because that was the two choices to move to manage that size of a region. So, things had changed. The culture of the company had changed a lot, and I was ready for a change. It was time to move on. I had 18 absolute wonderful years. Still collect a very lucrative pension from Tenneco, but they made me, really the manager that I am today, and that I enjoy. So we decided to move on.
And is that where you did you go to Ray Bestis from there, Kevin?
No, I made a coffee. I did some consulting. There was 3 sales agencies, one in New York, one in Chicago, one in LA. Miller Hollander in New York, Ray Licht in Chicago, and Joy Middleman in California. And we became very good friends through my industry networking. And Mr. Hollander kind of hooked me into Ray Licht. Ray Licht was an ex-Monroe guy, and they were close with Joey. And I did some consulting for them for about 6 months. So finally, one day, I think we were sitting out in California, Joey said, listen, we got a company that needs you. We love what you're doing. You've really helped us get our marketing strategy straightened away, and they're trying to consolidate their efforts as agents without having to each of them spend individually. So I mean, it was a good experience working with those guys, and they got me a job at a company called Carroll Cable out in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Ray Licht actually had been the vice president of sales there years ago. And Carroll Cable, which then became, when I left, it became General Cable, a great company, but not exactly where I wanted to be. And then along came, and I'm the way this is going, Bill, I love it because I've now been able to cover Warren Ellis, who taught me how to entertain, sales, and marketing. Paul Frank, who took my career and really polished it and gave me, learning how to handle responsibilities. And then I come to my next 2 mentors, the one who gave me the introduction and then the one who hired me. So my introduction was a guy by the name of Jack Creamer. And many of you know Jack, small world. Jack used to have coffee downstairs below my office when I lived in Fairfield, Connecticut. And Jack and I had known Jack, kind of, again, introduced to him by Warren, but now I'm back. It's my territory. Jack and I spent a lot of time together. So when I knew Carroll Cable wasn't going to work out, I called Jack because we had remained close. And he said, I said how somebody was interviewing, I think with brake parts for a job. And he goes, well, he's not doing well. But he said, there's a guy over there by the name of Larry Pavey that he said, I think you'll do real well with. I said, I know Larry a little bit. He's an ex-Walker guy. Hopefully he doesn't hold against me. And Larry flew out to Providence, Rhode Island. We spent 4 hours at the airport talking. And for the next 12 years, Larry really not finished, but really put the cherry on top of the ice cream to really give me the senior managerial experience that I was lacking. We did acquisitions together. We did mergers. We expanded sales forces. We put together a complete friction program for Napa. We took the Raybestos name, which was really, an old name, but one that had kind of been put into the closet and kicked around and, all sorts of dust on it called asbestos. So we worked for the Eklund Corporation, Fred Manchesky, and Larry really helped my next part of my career. And we had a lot of fun. We had a just tremendous amount of fun growing that brake parts Inc. business, whether it was Raybestos, the Napa United brand. A lot of fun. So those are my four mentors that I've been able to look back on, and each one played such a different role in my career.
And for you and your brands, Kevin, your customers are distribution and technicians. You're not necessarily talking to John C. consumer coming into to get his car fixed. You want the distributor, a retailer, and the technician to know your brands, and they in turn can sell it to the consumer if need be.
Absolutely. And may I compliment you, Bill, in your company, because you've provided us the platform to be able to network to those folks throwing the box away. And some of the webinars that we've had, and when you see 400 or 500 people signing up for a webinar through your magazine, it's unbelievable. And you provide us, the manufacturer, the platform to demonstrate the features and benefits, or the technical support. Use a torque wrench instead of grabbing the old impact wrench and tightening it down. So, congratulations to Babcox for affording us manufacturers that platform to reach out to the end users, throwing the box away. That's so critical, because those guys love to see that message and they love to hear it. And again, it's a new platform. It's not like it was yesterday, being able to go call on a bunch of installers, or, having them gather around a lift and bringing in a couple cases of beer and pizza and say, okay, now we're going to teach you how to bolt on a hub. No, that's not today. Today, it's virtual. Today, it's a webinar. Today, it's an electronic leave behind piece. So it's a different venue, but I think it's a great venue. I think it's really it's in today's, mind of people to be able to get on a webinar real quick, clean, informative, boom, done.
Yeah. All business too. You get right down to it with the webinars.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great job. My congratulations to your team.
Well, you're nice to say that. Thanks for those comments. So just parlaying that, extending that conversation, you've worked for some major brands, Tenneco related, Raybestos, NTN. What's your view of brands in the business, the value of a brand, positioning of a brand? How important is it in your view?
Well, obviously, my view is brand. And the challenge that any of us have today is continue to market that brand. And, the challenge got real tough, Bill, a year and a half ago when we all had a shelter in place and work from home. And the pandemic opened up to us some great opportunities. I said to my people in April of 2020, anything you did yesterday, you will not be able to use tomorrow going forward. And my thought was, we cannot communicate the same way. We have got to find different venues. We've got to be able to be flexible. We've got to be able to translate, paper brochures that you give out at every trade show, make it electronic. You got to be able to have that PDF file so the salesman can transfer that right to the end user, so that the end user can take his tablet or his pad and go to the consumer who's still sitting in his or her car because they're not coming into the shop, and be able to show them exactly what a BCA hub bearing is like, and that's OE quality. So I think from where I sit today in the brand awareness, the winners are going to be the ones who can communicate that message in this new format and this new day that we are working in. And it's a challenge, but I think consumers today have learned a lot too. I think they've spent more time probably looking at brands, and obviously every consumer, how would you like to have the Amazon Sprinter van contract? If they show up at everybody's house at least 3 times a day. I don't know how they do that, but so it's a huge opportunity. And I think consumers, because when you do go to such sites like that, they're branded products. They're not selling XYZ products that people never heard of or know of or can't do research on. So I'm very proud to have people go and, Google our brand and find out the heritage and the OE quality that we put in to every one of our parts. And I think a lot of other manufacturers are doing the same thing to keep that brand awareness up and support the aftermarket and provide the consumer quality parts, especially the technician, because he, of all people, right now cannot afford to do a job twice.
So Kevin is Vice President, Sales and Marketing, NTN Automotive Aftermarket. What's the pitch? When you're calling, I presume that you're talking to a lot of customers, and probably some you've known for a lot of years. What's your elevator pitch for NTN?
Well, first of all, you have to remember NTN and the Automotive Aftermarket Group. We have 2 brands that we market. We have BCA and we have Bauer. BCA is for the automotive segment. Bauer is an old truck heavy duty program. Both names, another closet, we brought out 2 old brand names, much like we did at Rebestis. So the first thing we had to do was break down some barriers of the former owners of those 2 brand names and establish them as NTN brands. And so, BCA by NTN, and that was the marketing of the program. But the short pitch is NTN is the world's largest hub manufacturer globally. We have about an 800,000 square foot facility here in Elgin, Illinois, that we make hubs. And so therefore, we are the leaders. We have about 36% of the OE business that we sell. So really, that was the basis of the launch of the BCA program. Funny thing happened as we launched the program. One of your interviewees the other day, John Washbish, the Alliance endorsed the program. And you ask about, knowing people and friends and, kind of parlay that to go at least get an invite to go in and present our program. And then fast forward, so we get the hubs launched in June, July. We're at the Apex show in November. And as we're walking out the door, Dan Rader puts his arm around me. He goes, "Judge, we love the hub program. It's really going well. It's exactly what we wanted. OE quality. We got the pitch. It's really working. But could you add loose bearings and seals?" I'm going, "Oh my God, more product." But the good news is 90% of the loose bearings that we sell, we manufacture either in our plant in Macomb, Illinois, or Alabama, or we bring them in from Japan. So you take those 2 elements of our manufacturing capability, and we truly are an OE, product that the customers are receiving, either made here in the U.S. or made in Japan.
Kevin, tell me about your first job, and also what was your first car?
Well, my first job was our family-owned business, which is now fifth generation. It's now a group, but we had a warehouse in Lockport, New York. It was an it was an industrial mill supply company. And we sold everything from hammers to nuts to bolts to big pipe, valves, anything industry needed to keep going. And as a young man, I used to drive the pickup truck during the summers. I'd get that wake up from my father about 2 a.m. The Harrison radiator needed some valves, run them out to him. You know where the valves are, you know where the pickup truck is. So that was really my first job. And so with regard to my first car, interesting question. It probably will be one of the more unique answers you'll get. So my wife's father, my father-in-law, Warhoops Auto Parts in Sterling Heights, Michigan, which was it was a junkyard. I was going to say he was a reclamation engineer. It was a junkyard. And so my junior year in college, I did not have a car for my first 2.5 years in college. So as Diane and I were getting serious, she says, aren't you tired of driving my car when you like to have your own car? I said, yeah, I think it's time. So I meet her dad and I said, got a car you can sell me or fix up for me? He goes, oh yeah. So Bill, he literally took 2 1962, I think. No, they might have been 60s. Ford Galaxies. One was damaged in the front. One was damaged in the rear. He cut the 2 in half, put them together. That was my first car I ever had out of my father-in-law's junkyard, made up of 2 crashed vehicles.
Well, I'm sure that will be the most unique answer we get on that.
And it was a great car. I loved it.
What did he charge? What did he charge you for that car?
$400.
Pretty good value.
Yeah, $400 for a Ford Galaxy 500. Army green. Oh my God, it was the ugliest car I'd ever seen, but ran like a charm. Good old Detroit iron.
Fantastic. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today on AMN Drivetime. It's been great to have you with us.
Thank you, Bill. My best to you and your team for making this possible and helping to market the brand names in the automotive aftermarket to the guys throwing away the box these days.
Great, Kevin. See you in Vegas.
See you, Bill. Thank you.
This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.